What is up, everybody? It is BK Voice over here, and welcome to our quick recap of week one of free agency and just a recap of other off-season moves that have been made prior to the start of legal tampering and free agency itself. So yeah, a lot has happened over the past week or so, and even in the weeks leading up to free agency, and I figured it would be good to go through where we are right now. And this is currently the state of our off-season moves as it stands at 1 p.m. Pacific time on March 19th. So, if you're wondering oh, well, why didn't you capture this move that was made after that time? Well, because I didn't make the video then. So let's do a quick recap. So I've split this into 5 sections. So you've got the players that we have re-signed to the roster, players that were cut from the team or traded to other teams, players that were received via trade, players that signed with other teams, and then players that we signed from other teams. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with the players that were re-signed by Seattle. The first 2 that I listed, and just as a heads up, the color coding over here, if it's light pink, that's referring to a restricted free agent tender. Light yellow is an exclusive rights free agent tender. Light green is an unrestricted free agent. Yellow is traded to or we received from a trade. And then the orange is we cut them from the roster. So if you don't know what a restricted free agent or an exclusive rights free agent tender is, go back to my previous series on the My Dream Offseason scenario for the Seahawks, and I explain it there. So we'll start off with players that we re-signed. So first up, we have guard Phil Haynes and defensive tackle Brian Monet. Both great depth signings. As we'll see a little further down, Al Woods got re-signed, so I think having Brian Monet for depth on that line, especially since we're moving over to a 3-4 defense, it seems, I think it's a great signing. Phil Haynes played great in a reserve role. He played in 2 games at the end of the season in place of an injured Gabe Jackson and an injured Damian Lewis, and he played great in both of those opportunities. So getting him back on the cheap on a 1-year deal, fantastic move. Moving on to our exclusive rights free agent tenders, pretty much agree with almost all of these. So Ryan Neal, fantastic depth. Getting him for 1 year, $1.035 million is an absolute steal. Getting John Radigan and Tanner Muse back as linebacker depth, I think is great. John Radigan was a great special teamer for us last season. It's really terrible that he suffered that ACL tear towards the end of the season. Tanner Muse, former 3rd-round pick by the Raiders, picked him up early in the season last season. I thought it was a great pickup, and I think he has that pedigree. I think we can really find a good way to use him, whether that is at linebacker or playing safety. So yeah, I think that we can make good use of Tanner Muse. John Reed had some decent play in the minimal snaps that he got. I see him more as a slot corner, so I see him backing up Ugo Amadi, so decent enough. Nigel Warrior didn't really play a whole ton. Had some special team snaps towards the end of the year. He was injured for the first part of the year too. But yeah, fine depth signing, a decent camp. I don't think there's a chance that he makes the roster though. Wide receiver Penny Hart, Russell Wilson's training camp darling every year it seems like. Getting him back for the cheap, another camp body. I think that there's a good chance that he might make the roster again. They might just be keeping him around just to see what happens. But yeah, these tenders are also fully non-guaranteed. So if you cut him, it doesn't cost you anything. Now we'll get on to the actual unrestricted free agent signings, and I realize I missed another one here, but I will get to that in a second. Number 1, we got tight end Will Dissly. We re-signed him at 3 years, $24 million. Some people are trying to justify paying him that much. I'm not one of those people. 3 years, $24 million, just going off of his past he's not worth anywhere close to that. CJ Uzama is making that much. The same as Will Dissly, and Will Dissly is nowhere near CJ Uzama, I think, at this point. He's got good hands. He's a good route runner, really good run blocker, and an okay pass blocker. He's also not very athletic, and he has suffered 2 catastrophic knee injuries. So I'm a little confused by that. I'm okay with bringing him back. I love Will Dissly, but not for that price, especially since you have Noah Fant, who I think, granted, Noah Fant is not a blocking tight end. He's going to be your like receiving, like red zone threat. But yeah, all for bringing him back, but not for that much. Quandre Diggs, it's a good signing. I mean, I didn't include Diggs in my off-season scenarios series as a re-signing just because I'm still not a fan of paying $30+ million a year to your safety group, but I think with the cutting of Bobby Wagner, you really need some of those like voices in the locker room, that veteran like defensive leadership, and I think Quandre Diggs gives that. And plus, you got him for basically market rate. They signed him for pretty much exactly what I thought that he would make on the open market. So it's a good signing. I give that a B. I think I predicted that he would get somewhere along the lines of 3 years, $39 million. So it's really close to that. I can't be mad about this contract. And then arguably what I think is one of the best signings so far of free agency is that of cornerback Sidney Jones. Got him for 1 year, $3.6 million. Dude was fantastic. I mean, he had the start of his career really derailed by injury, but he's just been getting better and better and better every year, and he really broke out this past year. Didn't record any interceptions, but his coverage metrics were absolutely wild. Playing opposite to DJ Reed also helped that, but I think he was having less than like a sub 55% completion percentage, which is absolutely wild. My only gripe is I wish they could have signed him to a long-term deal, but signing him again for 1 year, for what they're signing him for, fantastic pickup. I give that like an A-. Defensive tackle Al Woods. He's absolutely worth the money just based on how he played last year. He played last year on like a 1 year, $3 million deal, and he was easily one of our best defensive linemen last year. So I'm okay with the signing. My only concern is his age, but that really didn't show last year, and this is one of those deals that I think it's really easy to get out of. Like if he completely collapses, you can get out of this deal pretty easily next season. The one that I did forget to add, and I will go ahead and add that now, is we re-signed center / guard Kyle Fuller. I don't know the deets, but I can't imagine it's more. It's got to be vet minimum. It can't be any more than that. And even if all the other signings so far, I'm semi okay with. I don't like the Dissly contract, how much he's getting paid, but I'm okay with bringing Dissly back because I think he is still a good player. Kyle Fuller is just bad. He is just terrible. So I know PFF grades are not the end all be all in the NFL, and you shouldn't just, they're still a decent metric. You just should not base your entire perception of a player just based on the PFF grades they received. You need to actually watch the film. You need to go and like really observe like how they're getting off the line. Are they like planning themselves well? Are they moving well? Are they getting their hands up? Kyle Fuller is just bad. He was of 38 qualifying centers by PFF last season, he ranked 38th, dead last. In that Saints game, he had a pass blocking grade of 0. Every single snap he played, every single pass blocking snap he played, he lost, and he lost bad. And if you go watch him, it's quite obvious. Like, this offensive line was pretty bad until they realized, okay, we can't do this anymore. We got to throw Posick in here. And as soon as Posick went in, Posick was above average. He was playing like an above average center. And I don't think that they're going to be bringing back Ethan Posick because of a signing that you can probably see on the right, but we'll be discussing a little later, in Austin Blythe. But this signing makes absolutely no sense to me. I do not understand why they are so obsessed with this guy. He has proven time and time again how useless he is. And when he went from center to guard in place of an injured Damian Lewis, he played even worse. Worse to the point that you had to... Well, granted, they pulled him out because of an injury. And then he was so bad, he had to throw Jake Curran in to play left guard. When Jake Curran is not a guard, he's a right tackle. It was pretty bad. So I give the Kyle Fuller signing an F, even if it is veteran minimum, because I would never add this man to an NFL roster, period. So that's my Kyle Fuller rant. Moving on to the players that got cut and traded by the Seahawks. So prior to the start of free agency, obviously we've talked the Russell Wilson trade to death. He saves you $11 million in cap savings, plus you got Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, and Noah Fant. The contracts that you're going to be paying out to those three players basically make any of the cap savings that you got from Russell wash. It does save you a little bit of money, but not anything that's like huge, you know. So cutting Russell Wilson, getting Drew Lock, I don't think they're gonna. I know they're talking up Drew Lock, and I mean, what else are you gonna say? You're not gonna say like, oh yeah, we traded for Drew Lock, but he's absolutely sucks, and we can't see him actually starting for this team at all. Of course, they're not gonna actually say that. But I think they've made it very clear that they're going to be going after a more better veteran option, whether that's through a trade. I know there's been some talk about Baker Mayfield or maybe trading for Matt Ryan. I think it's more likely that they get either a cheaper option or they use their second pick or a second round pick on a younger quarterback, maybe a Matt Corral or a Sam Howell type. Shelby Harris, I really like the Shelby Harris pickup. Dude is such a great leader in the locker room. I've got a couple of Denver friends that I've talked to, and they were really, I mean, they're thrilled to have Russ, but they were really downtrodden when they heard that Shelby Harris was leaving, because the dude was just an absolute stalwart in that locker room. And he's also had he's had a decent couple of seasons. He's coming off a five or six sack season. Had a pretty decent year, so I think he'll be a great addition to the line. And then tight end Noah Fant. If there's one thing that I think Seattle didn't really have, it's like a true receiving threat tight end, and that's what Noah Fant is. He has that first round pedigree. Apparently, according to John and Pete, they were really high on him. If they said that if he was available at 21, they would have, in the I think it was the 2019 draft. Yeah, it was the 2019 draft. They said that if he was still available at 21, they would have taken him, but lo and behold, the Broncos take him at 20 right before him. And then they proceeded to totally blow that pick by trading down to 29 and taking LJ Collier. And I don't think I need to explain how bad LJ Collier has been. So that's kind of covers the Wilson trade and what we got from that. Now, I'm not going to talk about the draft picks. We'll talk about that in a later video. Now we'll talk about the cuts. All of the cuts that we have seen so far in the offseason have all been along the front seven. And the reason I think now that we've seen a couple of their offseason signings is because I think they are moving full-time to a 3-4 in Clint Hurtt's defense. Releasing Benson Mayowa, he had a very mediocre season, and I think they want to get younger at that outside linebacker position, so cutting Mayowa saves you about $1.5 million. Decent cut there. Cutting Carlos Dunlap, he's going to be a post-June 1st cut, so you save $5.1 million in cap this season. Dunlap was your sack leader last season. He had 8.5 sacks, but I understand why they're letting him walk. One of the reasons, aside from playing time, that he wanted out of Cincinnati was because they were playing a 3-4 defense, which Dunlap does not really fit into. He doesn't really fit into that outside linebacker role very well, or that like big end role that's like commensurate with that 3-4 defense. So I think it makes sense to let Dunlap walk at this point. And then Kerry Hyder, we signed him just last offseason to like a 3-year $16.5 million deal. Played one season. Decent in the run game, but a very mediocre pass rusher. Had like 1.5 sacks. Didn't really do a whole lot. And I guess they didn't really see how he fits into Clint Hurtt's defense going forward. So cutting him saves you about $1.9 million. So yeah, I think this is a good sign, or like a sign of them like completely revamping that defense. Moving on now to players that signed with other teams. You have offensive tackle / guard Jamarco Jones. He was more of a backup over the past couple seasons for us. He played decent enough in those roles, but I don't think the Seahawks saw him as anything more than a backup. He gets more money than I was expecting him to make. He goes to the Titans for 2 years, $5.75 million. Honestly, I wish him all the best there. And then the one I think that stings the most is DJ Reed. Reuniting with his old DC and Robert Saleh in New York for 3 years, $33 million. And if you guys watch my Dream Offseason Scenario series, or my off-season scenario series, you'll know that that is exactly what I would have paid DJ Reed if they were going to keep him on the team. I call that to a friggin' T, and I am very proud of myself for that. He did say a little, he felt this a very, I'm trying to remember the word he used, like disappointed, disgusted with like the deal that the Seahawks offered. I bet you they offered him something like 3 years, $5-6 million a year, and I honestly I wouldn't have taken that. Like, oh my goodness. So yeah, best of luck to DJ Reed. I think he's gonna do great. But yeah, I think I would have paid him $33 million or like $11 million a year, but that was commensurate in my offseason scenarios that you weren't going to be re-signing Quandre Diggs. So I think if you're going to re-sign Quandre Diggs, I think letting Reed walk was going to happen. But I'm happy that at the very least they brought back Sidney Jones, because you have half of that really good starting corner room from last season. So, and then as far as new players go, we have 4 signings that the Seahawks have made so far. And a lot of them make sense. All of them make a lot of sense. So cornerback Artie Burns, he signed a 1-year, $2 million deal with the Bears. Former first-round pick by the Steelers. Had 2 decent seasons to start off his career, but was pretty disappointing since then. Played 1 season with the Bears last year. Didn't play too much at the beginning of the year, but when he got snaps end of the year, dude absolutely turned it on. He was great. Bears fans, as far as I can tell, were pretty thrilled with how well he was doing. I think like over the last 4 games of the season last year, DJ Reed had the highest PFF grade of any cornerback in the NFL, and you want to know who number 2 was? It was none other than Artie Burns. So he might even be your starting slot corner. But if not, I think as it stands right now, your starting corners are going to be Sidney Jones and Trey Brown, and then Artie Burns is going to be your backup. It's a super small deal. So it's really non-consequential. The biggest deal so far that the Seahawks have given out was kind of a shocker originally. We'll come back to this actually. And then the Artie Burns signing makes a lot of sense because also he played for the Bears under defense coordinator Sean Desai, who is now our associate head coach. So yeah, that signing also makes sense. Sorry, going back to the second signing we made, outside linebacker Uchenna Nwosu from the Chargers, 2 years, $20 million. Fun fact, is actually the highest value contract on like a per year basis that the Seahawks have ever given out to a player in free agency. So that's fun trivia if you ever go to like a trivia night with your buddies. So obviously, like I said before, I think this is a consequence of them moving more to a 3-4 defense, because I think Uchenna Nwosu, as it stands right now, is going to be your starting outside linebacker. opposite of Darrell Taylor, you'll have Darrell Taylor on the right-hand side. Or sorry, no, you'll have Darrell Taylor on the left, and you'll have Uchenna Nwosu coming off the right. He kind of had a breakout year. The sack numbers aren't anything crazy. He got like 5 sacks last season, but his pressure rate of 13% is really intriguing. I think one of the problems last season is like when we were like, we would get, some players would get sacks, but when they weren't getting sacks, they weren't getting much pressure. I'm looking at Rasheem Green here. So yeah, I think we paid a little too much for him, but I can't be too upset about that contract. I'm happy that they're going younger. I think he's only 25. So yeah, fantastic, good pickup. Very happy. And then, for the love of God, thank goodness they finally looked elsewhere at center, and they got Austin Blythe. Center Austin Blythe. He played of the Chiefs last season, but more. You'll probably remember him more for his few years that he played for the Rams as their center. So, I think the signing makes a whole lot of sense. The Chiefs signed him last year, I think on like a 1-year deal. I think he was expecting to be the starting center for them, and then Creed Humphrey came in and was a friggin' Pro Bowl center, arguably the best center in the league last year. And Austin Blythe just didn't play, not because he wasn't healthy or not because he wasn't good. It's just that Creed Humphrey was just friggin' insane. So on the bright side, Austin Blythe didn't really play a whole lot last season, and he doesn't have that many miles on his body. So I think he's set to be 29 when the season starts, so he's still on the right side of 30. So great signing. I think unless they try to address it in the draft, I think early in the draft with like a Tyler Linderbaum, I think Austin Blythe is going to be your starting center next season, which doesn't speak too well to Ethan Posick coming back. And then our last signing so far of free agency is none other than defensive end / defensive tackle Quinton Jefferson, a familiar face. He drafted by the Seahawks, played for the Seahawks for 4 years until he hit free agency a couple seasons ago, signed a 2-year, like $13.5 million deal with the Bills. Was pretty disappointing. His first season with the Bills proceeded to get cut after his first season. Played with the Raiders and had his best season in the NFL. I think I actually have his. Let me pull up his PFR stats real quick. Quinton Jefferson. You can tell that I already looked this up before the video. But yeah, had his best season like a couple seasons ago when he hit free agency for the first time. Had 3 pass deflections, a fumble recovery, 3.5 sacks, 26 combined tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 10 QB hits. Only started 4 games for Buffalo. He had 1 pass deflection, 1 forced fumble recovery, 3 sacks, 23 combined tackles, 3 tackles for loss, 6 QB hits. Not very great. Was cut after a season. And then like I said, had his best season for the Raiders. In 2021, started all 17 games, had a pass deflection, 2 forced fumbles, 4.5 sacks, 47 combined tackles, 5 tackles for loss, tied his career high for tackles for loss, and then set a new high for QB hits. So if he can bring back 2021 Quinton Jefferson, I think this is a steal of a signing. So very happy with this signing. Great to have Quinton Jefferson. I was back. I was really sad to see him go, and I think he's going to be a fantastic signing. There's also going through all of the players we re-signed, obviously have some connection to the Seahawks in some way. So Quinton Jefferson, obviously he was drafted by the Seahawks, played with us for 4 years, bringing him back. He was also very thrilled that Clint Hurt, his former defensive line coach, was now the defensive coordinator, which is one of the main reasons he wanted to come back. Austin Blythe played several years for the Rams, so he has that Andy Dickerson and Shane Waldron connection, which is primary reason why I think that they brought him in. Uchenna Nwosu seems like, what is his connection to the guys on the Seahawks roster? Well, he did play for Brandon Staley, who is connected to that Vic Fangio tree. And I think they're trying to move towards more of a Vic Fangio style defense. So I think that was one of the primary reasons that he decided to come out. So yeah, we're at about 25 minutes now. or 24, 25 minutes now. So I think that covers every single free agency offseason move that we've had so far. There are a couple of other rumblings going on right now. There are some rumors that the Seahawks might go after Baker Mayfield. Also, Trent Brown, right tackle for the Patriots, had a visit with the Seahawks. I think he's checking in with the Patriots. I think the Seahawks made him an offer, and he's double checking with Bill Belichick to say like, hey, is this something you'll match? I really hope they bring him in, because that automatically like upgrades your right tackle position, and then you can get young at left tackle in the draft. Maybe use that number 9 pick to go and get somebody like a Trevor Penning, or possibly even a Charles Cross if he falls to you at number 9. So there's still a lot of rumblings going on. There's still a ton of stuff that's likely to happen before we get to the draft, and even after the draft. So thanks again for watching, guys. Be sure to like the video if you like the content, and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more news and off-season updates, as well as hitting that bell icon so you're notified when I post new content. Follow me on Twitter at BKVoiceover, TikTok also at BKVoiceover. I post some funny videos on there as well. And yeah, with that, thanks guys. Have a great rest of your weekend, and go Hawks.